and welcome. It's the first Wednesday of January 2022. Can you imagine 2022? I didn't think I'd live this long, and here we are. We are in the studio portion of Tim J. Leary Studios. This is where the magic happens. If you are watching, please click like or leave a comment or whatever. That helps me know who comes by with that. My tradition, and I can't change it, it's tradition after all, is I start with my libation, a little bit of Jameson. It is 5 o'clock after all. In fact, it's 5 o'clock here. I don't even have to say somewhere. So just a little taste and cheers. So here's my prop, a small color wheel. Tonight I want to talk about color. This is the thing that students get when they take color theory classes or when they're in art schools, often to learn about color relationships. It's a really cool, nifty little thing to get you started. Some people have questions about whether the colors on the color wheel really tell the tale, and I would say they probably don't tell the whole story, but it's probably a fine little framework for learning about color. So I have a prop. But what I want to do, I realized that I talked about color several months ago, probably when I went to my YouTube channel, which you can access through the website, timjleary.com. I saw that I talked about color about 8 months ago, and I looked at it a little bit, and I realized I got a little academic. So it's the holidays. I'm feeling a little more spiritual. I'm feeling a little more, touchy-feely this time of year, as I think is normal. So tonight, I want to talk about color, but I want to talk more about the feeling of color. I usually avoid talking about the feeling of color because I think it's like a slippery slope, because I think we make a lot of assumptions that are not really accurate. I think that we believe what I think is that a lot of the feelings that we have in regard to color are culturally motivated. So for instance, when we see a white gown, we think of a bride. But if we were in China, we would not. If we saw a red gown, we might think of a bride. So a great deal of this is cultural. Some of it I think is natural. The blue sky, the blue waters and that sort of thing. I think we do have visceral reactions to those, but I don't think that all of the things that we attribute to our psychological reactions are just that. I think that they are probably based in convention. They're probably based in style. When I look at some of my color choices, I think some of these colors come from certain periods of my life, reminiscent of that. Or as an artist, I might be picking a color that I think represents the thing I'm trying to create in my art. And I might like it or not like it. As a rule, there's very little in color that I don't like. I like them all. What is more important to me is how they relate to one another and how they make you feel. So here's where I want to start. I have some things to show, of course. And that is, I go back to John O'Donoghue, my favorite Irish author. He was a philosopher and a theologian, a one-time priest, and a marvelous writer. And this is one of my favorite books. I keep going back to it and back to it, called Divine Beauty. So this is, I would say, it's probably his theology of beauty, but of course he has to talk about color and light And so he lived in the west of Ireland, and so there are lots of mountains, low mountains, some of them, but the colors of those mountains in Connemara, the county he was in, very unique to that part of the world. So here is what he says. In a sense, one could speak of the secret life of color. Despite its outward beckoning, like true beauty, color is immensely hesitant in giving away its secrets. Painters learn to respect the hesitancy of color and endeavor to refine their skills to become worthy of its revelations. A painter learns the language of color slowly. As in learning any language, you struggle for a long time outside the language. There is a willed deliberateness to how you sequence the strange words to make a sentence. Then one day, the language lets you in to where the words dance to your thoughts with ease and fluency. Perhaps for a painter too, there is a day when color lets him in, when his palette sings with synergy and delight. For the artist Paul Klee, that day happened during a trip to Tunisia in 1914. He wrote, "Color possesses me. I don't have to pursue it. It will possess me always. I know it. That is the meaning of this happy hour. Color and I are one. I am a painter." Oh. Beautiful, beautiful sentiment. And interesting to me because Paul Klee was part of the Bauhaus. He was painting in the 1930s in Germany and at a design school. So there was a great deal of architecture and furniture design that came out of the Bauhaus. It's very important in the world of design and art, a very important juncture and a very important school that lasted probably only 15 years or so. Some of my more educated friends out there might be able to tell me off the top of their heads how long, but it was shut down by the Nazi regime as soon as they got into power because they did not appreciate the abstract work and the non-representational art that was coming out of there. And so, anyway, even though it ended, it never lost its influence because some of the most important designers came out of that. Well, look what I have. This is the artist, Paul Klee. And so when I said it was interesting, what I meant was his colors are sometimes appear drab by our eyes today. This one here, you've got some brightness here and it brings your eye in a way that, it brings the focus, also the sizes of the colors, which is something we can think about maybe in a minute. I can tell you about that. But in this, it's beautiful, but it is a little drab. So here's a man who is in love with color and color relationships. I thought I had saved something else. I did. I had saved this one from 1931. And I thought this was interesting because of the way he, through little squares, can you see that? Through these tiny little squares, he created shading, almost like a pointillism of sorts. He comes after pointillism, but he's still doing that, and it gives you an impressionist kind of appearance to his work. When I was looking at this book, I noticed also in here, music was an important part of his relationship to art and color. Kandinsky, Vasily Kandinsky, also experienced that and named his work after musical qualities like compositions and improvisations were the series of works that he did that were the most abstract and are very lyrical and musical. And I have to say that I have a bit of that experience when working with color. I sense a little music as I'm working with it at some points, which some people might think of as something called synesthesia, which is a mixing of the senses. But it is something that I experience. And of course I look for that because fun. So other places to look for color. Vincent van Gogh. I was talking to my friend Pia. I hope you're watching, Pia. And she was talking about going to this immersive Van Gogh show that's in, I think she said it was in West Hollywood. And it's rooms of his work being projected onto large walls, like the entire place. It sounds like a really cool thing, great immersive thing. Anyone I know who has gone to see the show is amazed. And the thing that they love about it are the colors. And so when I think of the colors of Van Gogh, I think about his sunflowers. He did bunches of them, bunches of sunflowers. But he painted a lot of sunflowers. He painted very heavily, globs of paint, and which is created a certain effect on his canvases. Here are some more of the same kinds of color that he brought out. Sometimes you wonder, I remember one time in some TV show, some character was a painter on the show, and somebody said, "Oh, all your paintings are brown," and he chuckled and said, "Yes, the brown is on sale." And you wonder, it's because a lot of this has to do with what's accessible and available to you, which localizes your work, incidentally. But to me, then, since we're talking about color, I like to point out, and I know I've shown these images before, he did a series of potato eaters who were the workers around where he lived. And what's intriguing to me about them, and there is some color, but they're really dark, and they have they're really intense faces and feeling. I really feel that I'm there with them in these dark rooms, eating potatoes with them. Not the, they may not be the loveliest of works, but I think they're really, really beautiful, really intense. Okay. Let's go here for a second to Mark Rothko. When I was thinking about this, I think I have to talk about Mark Rothko. Mark Rothko's work at the end of his career and his life was all about this kind of stuff, just great, large color studies. And these are large canvases. There's even and I don't know if I saved the page, but there's a chapel in Houston called the Rothko Chapel. That's very dark, very, well, here it is. It's all black. Rothko paintings need to be seen in person to be truly appreciated, because what he did to create these, I like this one here in particular, because of how he created this color. He did many layers of paint, thin layers of oil paint over the other, one over the other, in the same colors. And here you can see some different colors. If this yellow, as you can really see, even in the photograph behind the red, it still kind of shows through and it creates a bit of an orange. It almost mixes. I find his, and so I also find this work to feel, to me, very spiritual. Let's see if I saved anything else. Well, I saved this. There was a famous story of him doing a series of paintings for the Seagram's building for a restaurant on the ground floor in Manhattan. It was a big deal, but he got upset and angry about something, and he withdrew. After all or most of the paintings were completed, he withdrew and said, "No, you can't have my paintings." They ended up in other places, but he didn't want to have. He wanted people to appreciate the work. He didn't want to have people, sitting around and laughing and joking and eating and drinking and not looking at the work. At least that's how it was presented in a movie about him, which of course makes perfect sense to me. But But again, color and spirit together. And I have, I brought out this also because I wanted to show the absence of color, if you want to say that. George Seurat did these crayon drawings, Conte crayon drawings, and these were preparations for some of his works. His Sunday in the Park with George, the play about his painting Sunday at LeBron Jacques, I think it's called. Some of those prepped drawings are in this book. So he was able to, build those shapes, but still through the change of camera elders. Still, he created a mood and a feeling, and you can't, black is a color, hello. Can't really say there's no color, but it's just more about the values of light and dark in that, okay. I have more than I thought I had. So I wanted to pull out, wherever I put them, some of what I'm doing now. Here's one. This is a prep drawing for a painting that I did, and I'm going to actually repeat for someone I know. And I'm talking about, does that read on the camera? Can you see it? I'll show you guys over here. We have a little audience. That's the back of it. Here. You see the colors and all of that. So one of the reasons I said, how I experience the color. I picked them out for a couple of reasons. I think of what's next to one another and what's going to relate to one another. I think about adding a neutral so that it's not all too bright, like a circus, where it's all, or a Disney movie where everything is all primary colors. Then again, I'll take, like in some cases, I think I meant to do this here and probably didn't do it in the end. I'll take a single spot, a small spot, where I want to add a color, but it's different from everything else, and it's shocking. Maybe I'll put a shocking pink in the middle of a green painting just to get something going on there. So that's kind of the stuff that I'm doing. I did want to look at, let me set this over here. I did want to look in this book a little bit. And I started this whole thing, I was going to talk about the women of abstract expressionism. I haven't gotten there yet. This painter, this is Mondrian, is painting the same scene, I think at different times. 1906 on the left side, 1908 on the right, and the colors are different. And it creates a totally different mood. It could have been the time of year. As a painter, he might have been trying to just produce what he was looking at. But he also might have been adding some of these colors and perhaps the intensity of the colors, like this purple that's along this horizon, is, perhaps to create a mood. So when a painter is working with something like this, they're thinking of a couple of different things. This is Marsden Hartley, and I have to admit that I don't know much about this painter, but I wanted to show this painting because it's similar to things that I'm doing now. And the colors that he's selecting are not necessarily the colors that are present in the mountains. You see the purples, well, the purple mountain majesty, but you see the purple and the red and the yellow and the green and all together. But if we go back to what John O'Donohue says in the beginning here, that I've lost, the page that I've lost. about the rainbows and about all the colors coming together. They're in the light. Color is light. And so they are there, even if the artist is bringing them out more intensely than we might imagine otherwise. I'll show one last thing. Well, maybe I have a minute to show more. We can keep going. All right. Helen Frankenthaler, there's a wonderful exhibit right now at Palm Springs Art Museum, which is what I wanted to show. This is something from an exhibit that was there a few years ago. This artist is Mary Abbott. There were only a handful of women in only a handful of abstract expressionists women among the abstract expressionists who ever got any real recognition while they were working and alive. There were a handful of them. So there was a wonderful exhibit of some of them. Helen Frankenthaler is one of the very few who was ever known before today. I show these two paintings because they are similar compositions, but totally different colorways. And each one then has a totally different feeling. And then Helen Frankenthaler is well known for her soak stain, credited with the soak stain technique. These were done in the 50s. This one on the left, Jacob's Ladder, and this one, Western Dream, were done with oil paint. So highly diluted paints, probably diluted with turpentine. Now, those paintings are done, if you can get a little bit of this one, in acrylic, diluted with water. And I've played with this myself. And this is totally about the color. Totally. Let's go here. So, let me find some Helen Frankenthaler work. Her later work, I have some of her later work here, and I'll just run through these quickly. This is a large, she started mixing her techniques. Can you see it? This is acrylic paint on canvas, but some of it is soak stained, some of it seems to be painted on top. Same thing here. A large, very large canvas. And let me go through quickly, but she also did some works on paper, and they have a much different feeling. Still very abstract. She followed the art. She was creating something, she followed it. This one is also on canvas, is one that I really love. And this one that I really love. So these are still at the museum for another little while. So if you're local, you should go and see this if you haven't seen it already. So that's color. That's color a little more touchy-feely than the last time. And I love color. I love working with it. And sometimes I question myself, what am I doing? Am I doing it right? But I just keep doing it. And I don't know if it's right. But it's right because it's done and I can't change it. So if you're around here, come over here. We've got food pop-up out in the parking lot, Hoya Blanca, and they've got tacos and things for sale, and all of the galleries are open. Should be a very fun night. There's some music out in the parking lot as well. So I hope that if you're here, come by, and if you're far away, please let me know you're watching with a comment or a like, and I thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.